Hello, hello, hello. Welcome again. It's spooky season here on the Bad
Ooh.
Takes podcast. Oh, Andy, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, pretty good, pretty good. It's great to be back on here in the spooky season.
Yes, that's. I don't know if we're gonna call the show a quarterly or whatever we're doing. When we can, we get to it, and we got to do. We'll get more on it once I'm out of school. Well, the promotion will be better. Things will get better. Everything will just get better. Trust me, believe me. How would you? I mean, this is a lot of fun. This movie we're going to talk about today, but before we get to that, would you please introduce our distinguished guest, please?
Sure. First, we have Brenton Lengel, who is a comic book writer, and he's done a couple of interesting books that kind of tangentially relate to this film. One of them is Durruti, Shadow of the People, which is about the Spanish Civil War. Yep. Which is, the first
Wow,
issue is out, and second issue is coming out real soon.
Yeah, I got some fun announcements on that as
Oh.
well. So
neat.
Great.
the second issue is done. We're about to launch a Kickstarter to pay for the creation of issue number 1, which we are creating, and actually the actual CN team is helping us distribute that in Europe, like in Spain. So it's really excited. AK was issue number 1 for sale. If you want to get it, it's only $6 on their website. And launching a Kickstarter for issue number 2, which features Nestor Makhno, and I'm partnering with 2 really big Ukrainian charities. So you'll be able to, and also give to, keep people alive, keep the lights on, keep the doctors saving people. That because I just finished some meetings on that earlier today. But I'm really excited. The world is going to hell. I'm kind of sitting here going like, hey, does anybody need comic books? To help in a material way, as well as continue to tell Durruti's story.
We all do what we can with what we've got, right? And Brenton, you wanted to invite on a buddy, James Stout. Let's introduce him. Hey, James, welcome to Bad Takes Podcast. Tell us a bit about yourself. You are a historian by training, or as you said.
Yeah, that's it. But I don't really use my degree as much as some people do, which is fine.
Of course.
I have a PhD in modern European history. What I look at specifically is using sport, physical culture to build anti-fascist movements. And
wow.
Extremely specifically, I've written a book on the Popular Olympics, which were the anti-fascist alternative to the Berlin Olympics that happened in Barcelona. Unfortunately, the Spanish Civil War started the same day they did. So not a shit ton of Olympics happened.
Bad timing.
Bad timing, good timing. 400 people who had come for the game stayed to kill fascists, which is always a good thing. And so, good timing in that sense, right? And also, it wasn't a coincidence, right? Franco and his friends knew exactly what was going on. That's why it happened then, to a degree. I've written about that. I'm a journalist for the most part now. You can hear me almost every day on It Could Happen Here, which is a podcast that's part of Cool Zone Media. It was initially a colleague of mine wrote a fiction piece about how a second American Civil War could happen. Then it kind of started happening. So we have been documenting shit falling apart and people trying to stick it back together. We're doing a series on Myanmar very soon, which will be, for me, it's one of my the things that I'm proudest of in my little journalistic career is reporting on that Civil War.
Yeah.
I would definitely like to read that.
As a Buddhist, thank you, by the way.
Yeah, there is some problematic shit being done in the name of Buddhism over there, but it's good to see. There are, of course, Buddhist people fighting on every side in that civil war, but it's something that not enough people are reporting on, and I'm really stoked to have had the chance to get over decent quality reporting and share that with people.
That's exciting.
Yeah, I'm a big civil war appreciator. That's what brings me.
It's great because both of us are in a way and
Civil War enjoys.
Helped me out online because some people were messing with Nestor Makhno's flag and saying that it was secretly fascist because it had a skull on it. To have you come in there and help out.
Yeah, anytime, man. I'll bring out the iron fist of anarchism on it.
Well, speaking of fascism as a theme and as a subject, we are talking about today Valley of the Dead, which is a Netflix original produced in Spain, España, right? Where this is a zombie film set in the Spanish Civil War. I think we should watch the preview just to give everyone the vibes, but um, Malnazidos is the Spanish name. So very interesting. You can see they kind of accentuate the Z in the in the.
Well, what's
I
hilarious
got it.
is the
Got
the
to.
American one. They because if you look at all the Spanish and a lot of the European stuff, they have the Z done in blood, but then the
Uh-huh.
American one, they have the T in the for Valley of the
Ah.
blood. It's like, what the hell?
Got a little lazy. Lost in translation. I mean, Americans, you get, it's muy difícil para todos habla español. Pero let's watch this trailer and just kind of see where it goes from there.
Hoy iba a ser el día más feliz de mi vida. Hasta que llegaron ellos.
¿Eres bueno con las armas?
No es mi fuerte.
¿Y cuál es tu fuerte, soldado?
Es que yo no tengo fuertes, mi capitán.
Madre mía.
Y el Dios que da la paz levantó entre los muertos al gran pastor de las ovejas. ¡A nuestro Señor Jesús por la sangre del pacto eterno! ¡A Él sea la gloria por los siglos de los siglos! ¡Amén!
Malnacidos. Próximamente.
Está bien.
That is a damn good trailer.
Yeah.
like
Badly dubbed one. There's an English.
Oh, yeah.
There's another trailer that I'm not aware of. It's probably on YouTube.
Yeah, that's where I saw it.
Yeah.
Which I'm actually, I know some voice actors, and I hate to say this, like I just don't enjoy dubbed films.
Me neither.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys watch this in Spanish or English, but the dubbing was really
I
something.
watched it dubbed, but I watched it dubbed so I could take notes, and like only was halfway looking at this. Growing up on dubbed anime, this was not as some of the as some of the anime dubs I've seen, but still pretty painful.
See, I kind of grew up on watching English stuff dubbed into Spanish, so for me it was very odd to see this thing happening in reverse.
Because I watched this in Spanish, so with subtitles.
Oh, there's the one you're talking about, Andy. Valley of the Dead.
Yes.
I like this one. Bastardos.
Yeah.
With the Z at the end. Yeah, I mean, so this there's a lot of things going on in this film, but we're started out by we start out with a scene that's very typical to war movies, type of horror movies. The evil Nazis come and they just massacre a wedding party for no reason whatsoever, other than they're Nazis and they're fascists and that's what they do, right? Oh, but of course they're experimenting. Go ahead.
There was a reason in that, and the reason was I had to drink some liquor, and he had a hard time drinking it.
Oh yes,
yeah.
They laughed. They made the Nazi feel uncomfortable. How dare they?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I'm
trying to.
Which was weird too, because everybody was terrified of the Nazis, but then they immediately start laughing when the guy has trouble drinking.
Strange.
Goofed out there.
Yeah. That scene was a little weird.
Yeah, I think that scene just it needed to happen, or they had to set up the mass murder and the revival of the corpses.
Yeah, so they do that. We kind of get the scene where we get the idea that there's so many things to plumb here, but this idea that this zombie agent or whatever is introduced by none other than the Nazis, because of course.
Mhm.
But then after that, we're introduced to kind of this. You could call him the main character of the film, and it's Jan, right?
Han.
Han, yeah, and it's a strange thing that you see. Like immediately, they're trying to remove the main character from the side that he's on, the fascist, right? He's
Which they
standing
do
in
that with all
front.
the characters that are fascist.
Well, yeah, let's get more into that. But this character specifically is like facing a firing squad, and then his uncle comes to rescue him. Like, I mean, we got a historian of the Spanish Civil War here. Like, what's your take on this, James? And what do you guys think about this dynamic? Like, they're immediately trying to remove the main character from the fascism. It feels like.
Yeah, the idea that he was a fascist lawyer, that's not something I'm familiar with. That firing squads did generally do a lot of like legal bartering before they just shot people. Like especially
they tried
by
to claim, they tried to claim that he was giving trials to the communists, and that's why they were mad. And there were no trials taking part in the was not happening.
They said he had punched a judge or something that was buddies with Franco. Like that was
headbutted a judge.
Yeah, why he was in trouble, because he stood up to the fascist man.
Yeah, he's in his heart. He's an anarchist, but he's part of. At one point, he says he's with the Requetes, with the Carlists, which is like the exact opposite of that. Like, they certainly had absolutely no belief in like the legal code as anything other than subsidiary to their religious code. So I thought that was very odd. There were a few weird history things like that throughout the film that was strange.
Yeah, I did really like.
I wonder. Oh, go ahead.
He's basically Bruce Campbell meets Hawkeye, but as a lawyer.
Like badass lawyer.
He has that energy to him. I felt he was one of the better things about the film, to tell you the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yes. And they even had like another fascist who looked just like him. Which like, why'd you put the other dude in a? I got confused the first time I watched it because I thought he blew up in a car, and I'm like, that's weird to make the main character die like that. And I'm like, oh, it's the other guy with the mustache.
Yeah,
that's true. They did look quite alike, didn't they?
Yeah.
The one who joined because he just joined because he thought he was handsome and looked good in a military uniform.
Yeah,
character.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's funny. And then so he's like, as punishment, this character is sent on basically a suicide mission, right, across this valley, right? You got to go send this message. And he's, we saw the character in the preview just now, the kind of wiry guy. Can't remember his character's name. Maybe I could find it if I flip around a little bit. That's the guy who looks just like him. Yuri. We'll get more to all these different characters. There are a lot of fun. Priest Killer is like a cool name, but
instantly loved her.
Yep.
There we go.
This kid, De Cruz, this immediately bothered me. Like the way that he talks about why his little town supported fascism was because of like pastries that the nuns would make, and he's like, "Well, if the communists come, they'll take all the pastries." You know what I mean? And like, how I know fascism is a very I don't know, childish isn't the right word, but immature ideology. But like, what do you make of this, James? Like this kind of did people boil down arguments like this for fascism this simply? You know what I mean? Like, it kind of sounds like dumb arguments I hear today.
Yeah. So what I feel like it probably is that this film was funded, I think, by the Spanish Ministry of Culture, right? Ironically, also funded by PhD.
Oh my!
And along with the IOC, and I'm not sure either. Many Spanish Ministry of Culture don't mind me. The IOC don't like me. I think what we're seeing here is like there certainly were people who were just like their choices were like you can join the fascists and fight, or you can die right here against this wall. And certainly if you're just a dumb, character. He's portrayed as just like a dumb idiot kid, right? Like it's not unreasonable that like so that someone, but like in a way, it's also like it seemed like that discourse exists in Spain, right? And like a lot of the discourse around the war is like, oh well, not everyone actually wanted to be a fascist and blah. You know, they just found themselves in the zone and that's what they did. And so it's somewhat also mocking that discourse. But not that there isn't a seed of truth into it, but yeah, I think by saying like, "Oh, we did it for the puff pastries," it's kind of being like, "Yeah, well, you still fucking were a fascist. You're still on the wrong fucking side, weren't you?" Like, maybe I was reading into it, but like that's
no. I think it was tongue in cheek, but then it also is this oddly like it like both I was impressed like, oh, that's a funny like ironic take on it, but then it's also like, damn, that is a real skating over. You know what I mean? Of a lot of this shit, like, oh, you know, fascists, like we're fascists all for different reasons, right? You know, like, it was a little strange.
Yeah, because none of the fascists that are given a backstory, you know, seem to actually like have any real reason to be a fascist.
Yeah, and
but, like it wasn't about the ideology, as opposed to the you know, to the anarchists and communists and whatever the was on the other side, because which brings up one of my favorite moments is. He's like, "You're dirty communist." Like, I am an anarchist.
Yeah, of course.
That is in my notes.
Yeah, but then they had a Russian political commissar, or a communist political commissar. Yeah, very strange.
Yeah, the party operator, of course, was the evil one who wanted to use the Nazi the Nazi weapon against everybody, because of course both sides, right?
Yeah, but you can make an argument that there were some commissars who were pieces of shit in the on the Republican side in the Spanish Civil War, and it's an argument that I would make.
Sure.
There's some excellent books about the Lincoln Brigade, where people can read about how commissars, like the one Between the Bullet and the Lie, George Elby's book, is a bit of an older one, but a good one if you want to read it. But they call them comic stars. And just generally made fun of them, but there are definitely a lot of the Republican SIM, military intelligence service, definitely spent way more of its time torturing anarchists than it did doing anything that would be expedient in battlefield by torturing fascists.
Well, damn.
Yeah, sorry.
Well,
Civil War's sad.
Civil wars are bad. Yes.
Yeah. Well. You know, it's funny actually, because one of the most famous things at war that was said, and you find this in Homage to Catalonia. I forget exactly who said it. I said to George Orwell, "This is not a war. This is a comic opera with occasional death."
Yeah.
There's some serious horror that goes on during the Spanish Civil War, but also there's just some. I think one of my favorite things in like Homage to Catalonia that Orwell talks how the Russians come down, and what I thought would have been character is if he kept insisting he wasn't Russian and wasn't actually there. A ton of Russian, you know, who were Russian. They were part of the Russian army, but you know they were wearing uniforms without insignias. Spanish. How to fight, how to use the weapons being sent from Stalin. But what you've got to think, these are people that have just been through World War I and the Russian Revolution, and they're sitting there with the communists fighting the fascists, and then up off the line and walks away. And the Russians were sitting there like, well, it's time for the siesta. So we're going to do that now. And there's a lot when you like, there's the monstrous side, just like the incredibly funny side that, you know, shines through at these moments. And I mean, not now, obviously.
Yeah. I'm trying to find us more photos from the production, because IMDb isn't very forthcoming.
You got to look it up under the name of the Spanish name, and you'll find a lot more.
I see.
I did this trying to get like shots of like the characters so I could draw them, because you know I want it to look like them. And
great job.
Andy always does a great job.
Okay, you've picked a belter.
Whoops. Let me try it again. There it is.
But it's also interestingly enough, this was filmed in 2020, but didn't get released until this year because of the pandemic.
Interesting.
Yeah, very ironic to make a plague zombie film.
Oh God. Yeah. I remember I was binge watching The Walking Dead during the first bit of the
Buddy.
and I was like, this wasn't a good idea. But so here we have a good lineup of these characters, and so Jan and his little friend, the naive kid, they see a plane go down, and they go to kind of help the person. So again, these are the good fascists, they want to help people, right? And then they're out here and they run into this ragtag gang of leftist militants. Antifa is at it again, and we have a lot of great characters. I really do like the guy over his left shoulder, the kind of the elder leader, Sarge, yeah. But standout, definitely steals the show. We have this woman who plays the character who they just call her Priest Killer.
Yeah,
Yep.
Yo, what's up with that? How active was religion and anti-religion in the Spanish Civil War? Is this just a thing that, as Americans, we just don't know this cultural history of Spain, and it's being depicted
the
here?
other thing too, she actually does go through the history in that one scene where she's talking to the other fascist with a mustache.
Yes,
and she's like, by the way, you're right. I didn't kill him. He was breathing when I left.
Yeah.
But that was great. Though also they went away from her because she didn't kill him. James, do you want to explain a religious situation, or should I?
Yeah, I'll give it a crack. I'm wearing my Stay Lit shirt with a picture of a church on it, and that's because religion is everything in the Spanish Civil War. I think if we start from understanding that Franco is not a fascist in the same way that you would understand, it's not a classical fascist. He probably doesn't fit the motivating passions of fascism. If we're looking at Paxton's definition, right? Because there's far too much religion in his fascism. I think one of the things I agree with Paul Preston on, and there are not many things, but one of the things is Paul Preston said Franco wasn't a fascist; he was something worse. I think that's a perfect way of describing him. Yeah, he's a piece of shit. But Franco saw himself as a national Catholic. So religion was everything. Franco described his campaign as a glorious crusade, right? The place he was buried until 2019 was the biggest, it still is the biggest cathedral in Catholicism, Valle de los Caídos. It's also the biggest mass grave in the world. Because he stuffed it with the victims of his terror.
Jesus.
Yeah, in Durruti, Shadow of the People, so in the script, you'll find this out in issue 3, but Franco is carrying around the Saint Teresa de Avila, which real life looks exactly like the Infinity Gauntlet, and he actually he carried that hand with him everywhere. He slept under his pillow, and he died clutching it. So yeah, Franco was an absolute nut. What I will say also, though, is that there's a saying that the Spanish follow a candle or a club. So there's both the heavy fascist. Franco's in a way he's also trying to almost reassert feudalism as opposed to industrial fascism. But then there's also the fact that both the church, there were nuns actually on both sides, and the whites also, but you never hear about that. You only hear about the red. Also, what people miss is that the Catholic Church was an abs in this conflict. When Durruti assassinated, that guy was implicated in both prostitution and human trafficking, the assassination of anarchists. So yeah, it's not hanging out being priests or even being
no.
Kind of that is an active war where there are priests on front line telling the fascists to shoot more. So
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
I mean, Spain tearing itself apart at this point.
Like if we
Wow.
look at the first day of the Spanish Civil War in Barcelona, the big you can still see this actually in some churches. It's like that they had pre-stationed snipers in the church towers all around the towns. Right, then the anarchists came out, and by the end of the day, the anarchists were in control of the city. Right, and you can read about this in Brenton's graphic novels, but. Yeah, there were snipers in the church towers. They probably weren't priests. They were probably snipers who were there with the full knowledge of the priests. But yeah, that's why a lot of churches got burned. A lot of churches got burned in the first few weeks of the Spanish Civil War. But as Brenton said, like the vast majority of the extrajudicial executions were done by the Francoist side, not by the Republicans.
Yeah.
We just don't hear about it as much because there's not this unaccountable global superpower that is the church. But like doing myth making about one side of the war.
Absolutely. It's also like, I mean, one of my favorite quotes of Derudi, Peter Kropotkin, but it's the only church that illuminates is a burning church. Which thank you for that.
Bang, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we have this character, Priest Killer, and of course they end up stoking like a romantic interest between these two.
That was lame.
Yeah, not too great. Not a little ham-handed, more than a little. But you know, the interesting thing. So you have her as a character, but then you have all these. You know, they end up being. Running into another group, which includes a nun, and it includes, you know, like another fascist or two, and a Muslim character, which is it'd be interesting to explore, of course.
Historically accurate. That is historically.
Yeah, that's very much. Yeah. Okay. So Franco was a general in the Army of Africa, right? And the Army of Africa was Spain's only effective. But the anarchists were much better armed, better trained, and better equipped than the regular Spanish army. But the Army of Africa knew what was up. They'd been fighting colonial wars in Africa for a long time, and a lot of different like North African tribes had been enlisted by the Francoists to help. And they like that doesn't mean they weren't racist, because they were extremely fucking racist.
Yeah.
But, like they like their whole thing would be like, our North African soldiers are coming to rape your women because they are animals, brutal, sexual sadists.
It was
blah, blah, blah.
that was. Yeah, propaganda of the time was that they used rape as a weapon, and specific rape at the hands of Moors, like as a weapon. Yeah. In a weird way, like Spanish fascism was their own colonial policies rebounding on the country, because Morocco. Yeah. Say what, James?
Yeah, fascism can be like a sort of industrial colonialism rebounding towards the left and the working class in a lot of places, I think. Yeah, you're entirely right. I think that's a great analysis. It's interesting to look at the experiences of Black American volunteers in the Spanish Civil War, because they could serve without distinction, right? Like a black man under the law commanded the Abraham Lincoln Battalion, which was the American volunteer unit in the Spanish Civil War, right? So they weren't discriminated against. In fact, there's evidence that sort of it was seen as a very big propaganda coup to have black man in charge. But when they encountered random citizens that were driving on their own, they'd be like, "Oh fuck the Moors," and they'd be like, "No, you've got things mixed up." And then they'd be like, "Oh, sorry, dude, I like genuinely didn't intend for that to go down that way." Like, and there are these fascinating accounts of like I wrote a thing like years ago for the veterans of the Abraham Lincoln Brigade about this, but these fascinating accounts of people being like, "Oh, the Moors? No, okay, cool. Like, we have no like prima facie problem with you, you know, like." And indeed, for the Popular Olympics, which I write about, the Catalan government, the Catalan Popular Front government, paid the passage of the black athletes because they felt that an anti-fascist struggle wasn't a complete anti-fascist struggle unless it included liberation of black people in the United States.
Wow.
So, like, yeah, a very fascinating relationship with race in this conflict.
Wow.
It doesn't mean all the Republicans were not racist, because the Republic had a troubling problem with colonialism, but it was certainly for the time pretty woke.
Yeah. There was an incident, if you read Spain in Our Hearts by Adam Child, which I would really recommend. of the conflict. There was even a moment in there when like Black American nurses, like from like the Jim Crow South, are there, like, you know, the victims, and literally, I think one of them, like, I have never seen, like, as far as like the Spanish upper class, their attitude class, but they're like, I have never seen anything like this outside of like American racism. Like that's how I guess how brutal this divide was at the time, and like how dehumanized the in the view of like the Spanish fascists.
Wow,
that's very fair.
Yeah, I mean, there's a quote from one of them, like an official quote of he was like the fascist press officer, and he said, like, you know what's wrong with Spain? Plumbing. In better times, like more spiritually better times, we could count on out. But you know, now that the water's not killing them, like, we've got to do it now. And of course, they're going to Bolshevism. You know, because rats carry the plague, and you know, about a poor person.
jeez.
Yeah, really. A lot of bad shit. Went down.
Oh yeah.
So,
There is like a brutally horrifying version of this film that could be written. Like, it hasn't.
Yeah, man, there's a
Yeah,
brutally
maybe-
horrifying version of this film that like has been part of like many historians of my generation's lives. You know, like the mass graves that started opening up in 2007. Like, many of us have seen those, right? And like seen people of our age and our political convictions with bullet holes in their skulls. And like, yeah, the reality, unfortunately, is much gorier than this film. I've seen plenty of reports of folks being killed, like the way they. If people have ever seen a bullfight, which is cruel and horrible, one of the things they do is when they kill the bull, they kill it with a spike, right? And there was one part, I think it was in southern Catalonia, northern Valencia, I can't quite remember, where that's how they would execute the Republican prisoners, right? Like a cow. Yeah.
I don't remember this from the Wolverine comic that introduced me to the Spanish Civil War.
They done you wrong, man. Wolverine.
how did Wolverine take care of it? I want to know.
Well, first of all, he was sucked back in time while in Spain with Puck from Alpha Flight.
Of course,
yeah.
as was one is wont to do.
Yeah,
Well,
for
Lady
sure, naturally.
Deathstrike shows up at a bullfight that they were watching, and this time vortex opens up, and they end up in Spain.
Of course.
And the weird thing is Ernest Hemingway was there.
He was.
Yeah, well, Ernest Hemingway was there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so it's like Wolverine, Ernest Hemingway, and Puck were fighting Nazis. It was teaming up with Lady Deathstrike.
Yeah, well, Ernest Hemingway did fire some guns. I'm not sure if he shot any Nazis, but there's a really good picture of him firing a Mosin gun into the distance.
If I remember from Spain in Our Hearts, he was very keen on fire George Orwell, and unlike Orwell, somebody did give him a machine gun. Apparently, just wasted it.
Amazing.
Wow. So they run into this like ragtag group of like the leftists, right? And like, what do you guys think about their depiction of this group of, you know, this side of the conflict? Like, did it kind of reflect the diversity of it? It did feel a little like shoehorned in a lot of it, you know. We have this type of person and that type of person, but you know, you have priest
The
killer.
American Reporter, the first to die.
Well, yeah. So, but they have like the guy who like looks like a Russian. He's like, I'm from Russia. You know, I speak Spanish with a Russian accent. And you had all, you know, that whole thing going on. And then of course the commissar guy, right? The guy with the hat and the little glasses, because everybody knows the commies had those little hats and those little glasses. You know, what do you think about the depiction of those characters, and what did they get right? What did they get wrong?
So it was like they had to have one of each of the like colors of jelly bean for the Republicans, you know, like they had like an anarchist, and they had the commissar, right? And they had the secretly non-Russian guy, And of course, they had Miliciana, right, the woman fighter. It's anachronistic to suggest this is set. They talk about him here, how he should have been fighting at the Battle of the Ebro. And by the time the Battle of the Ebro was occurring, something called regularization had happened under Soviet influence in the Republican military. So it would have been unusual, very unusual, to have a woman fighting on the front line by then. Not unusual at all in 1936. Not unusual at all in the anarchist units. But by that time, it would have certainly you wouldn't coincidentally have a Soviet political commissar and miliciana. That would be unusual. But yeah, other than that, it was just like the Republic, the anti-fascists. Anti-fascists is always really, really diverse, and that's the thing that makes it strong. And sometimes it's the thing people forget. But yes, it just felt like they had to do one of each, so they did it. This is not a representative unit. Was there even an American? There was they did. American war reporter stand-in, like a Hemingway.
Yeah, they did. They had a white dude with kind of long hair, and he's like the first to go. I think he gets chopped up pretty easily.
Literally
and then
the first person to get bit by a zombie.
Yeah,
that's right.
And then the Russian breaks his neck, and his so his head's on backwards, and he's still zombieing, like
yeah. Oh man.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
I thought the casting was influenced by two things. One, I think by the film Land and Freedom, which is one of the and then I think the second thing was that I almost felt like some of it came from Musher. Like if you look at the casting that they did for Priest Killer, like I've woman before in my life, but I have met her again and again and again. Like I get a quality there that felt very very like modern. So yeah, I mean, I think that casting of the commissar was pretty good. I don't know what it is at this point, but people with round glasses are apparently evil in movies.
That's what it is.
Yeah. Of the Dead, it's the same thing. Dylan Moran's character has round glasses, and he does the exact betray everyone. But also, I felt like Frank happened. Was that the PSUC and the Soviets? Yeah, they did stab their own allies in the back and took over, and then promptly lost the war. So I felt like him being a traitor, both from his casting voice and just with the history. Like there's no way you're not gonna have that character, and you got to put that character, the people that he would betray, which would be the anarchists. So it's a little obvious, I guess.
Yeah,
and obviously he wouldn't as any of these people, because usually the militias were each organized by their own so the anarchists would not be in the same unit as a Marxist.
We're talking about this guy, right?
Comisario Politico. Yeah, he doesn't even have a name. He just exists.
That's like the last thing he says. I'm a party member, don't you know? And then the zombies jump him.
Yeah.
Don't you know who I am? I'm with the party.
A lot of people join the party, right? By 38, if you've been an officer in the army and remained loyal to the Republic, you'd probably also join the party, because that was the only real way to sort of advance in your military career, because it's the stuff Brenton talked about, right? Of the fact that a lot of the non-Russian commanders were Russian. A lot of them were also sent for being enemies, to sort of try and earn their right to return. Many of them did not, of course. Many of them end up in the Gulag. But yeah, this guy serves a very clear purpose, and there's a reason that he's there. The clothing's pretty good, by the way. I noticed their outfits were pretty spot on. I think the anarchists like to wear monos a lot, like blue jumpsuits. That was their kind of uniform, which I think she was kind of wearing something like that, I thought. But yeah, the hats and the leather jackets, I have a decent collection of photo books of Spanish Civil War, and they look pretty on vibe.
Their costume designer got what they wanted budget wise.
Yeah.
It seems like. There was so I like thinking about kind of the movie tropes. This is a movie podcast after all. We do try to a little bit, but like there was a bunch of zombie movie tropes. The people stranded in the house, like when they meet up with the folks in the house, and then they're surrounded in this house, and the zombies, are coming from every direction. And did any of you guys see the movie Overlord?
Yes.
Everybody see Overlord? So Overlord
I did not.
It's fairly recent.
Yeah, it's a fairly recent
The
zombies.
thing I love about Overlord is that they have Bakeem Woodbine as like the unit's sergeant of like a white group of people, with Bakeem Woodbine, as chewing the scenery. Like it is a joy to watch him, giving everybody orders and stuff like that, because Bakeem Woodbine's always fantastic whenever he's on screen. So
yeah, that movie's interesting though, because the whole it's a zombie film set in Operation Overlord, right? And it opens with not a like the opening. There's not a single zombie in it. It's just the 151st Airborne, jumping out of planes into France, the French countryside. And it's like the horror of war, you know what I mean? Like it's a horrifying, like it was like overwhelming for my wife to watch it. She was freaking out because we saw it in the theater and everything. But so you have this idea of like war as a horror movie. I'm not sure we got like tons of that from this. It really did feel like a cheesy, like kind of like Hogan's Heroes. Yeah, like it kind of had that Hogan's Heroes.
They had the guy with the missing limbs, and he's just like, "Oh, I bet you was masturbating," just
They were
seen a real life dude with missing limbs have that joke made to him more than once. But
oh my God, Jesus, some things never change, I guess.
No, yeah, you can make it funny.
Another thing that tripped me out about this movie is, and I wonder what you guys think about this, but like again, this depiction of like these cultural things that are part of the memory bank in Spain, but we don't know. Mm-hmm. And it was the way that these characters would insult each other. I found actually pretty entertaining. If I bring a photo of them back up, but they're fuck you in the ass, fascist. Oh, you would like that, you gay commie. Like they just say all of this stuff blatantly. Like, how present is this stuff still in the culture? Is it still like the stuff isn't that long ago? Is it forgotten? Are there other movies that are kind of like depicted in this way, or like how much is the Spanish Civil War in the media or in the zeitgeist or the memory out there?
It's very much so, man. I mean, like Franco was exhumed from his grave in 2019, flown across the country in a helicopter so no one could fucking car bomb his little trip. And then, which is interesting because Franco was also the first person to use a helicopter in combat. And then, Franco was reburied in a different grave because the problem was that on the day that he died, people would go there and do fascist salutes and like do a fascism and march around with their stupid flags and do fascist shit, right? Like, and the Spanish Civil.
Let's not forget he died in 1975.
Mm-hmm, yep, in his sleep, right?
2 years before I was born.
Yeah, and no one hung him upside down from a gas station and smashed his head in with a stick, right? Which more it's a shame, but that happened in Italy, and they got a chance to like Italy. Every other post-fascist state in Europe defined itself by anti-fascism, right? Even Italy, right? Italy, France, Germany, these are anti-fascist republics. Spain, but it makes this pact of transition, right? And in the transition, it says like that there's an amnesty for war crimes and other crimes committed under Franco, right? Crimes committed by the state. And so Spain, instead of becoming an anti-fascist republic in 1978, positions itself in between fascism and anti-fascism as the extremes, and says we're Spain, we're in the middle. These things were bad. The war was caused by these extreme points, like fascism being bad, and people thinking it was bad. And so
why do you gotta get so political if you're saying fascism is bad? Why do you gotta bring politics into this?
That's you're like doing a Vox. Like that's like why do you have to dig up the past? Why do we have to talk about like this shit is unfortunately like contemporary political discourse. And you've got to understand that, like, when Matagoros is killing priests, if we live in the same village, she's my grandma and she's knifed your grandpa in the face, you know, like,
Yeah,
we
dude.
still live in the same fucking village and we haven't moved. And they're exhuming the mass graves, like, people of my generation are exhuming. You know, I've spoken to the people who saw the execution, so we could identify the bodies in the graves. You know, like,
Jesus.
you know, this is very, very current in a way that I think it's hard. Even like the Second World War is a lot less current, unless you're like a boomer in the United Kingdom, than like this war is still for other Spanish people. Like, it's not taught in schools, right? They learn more about the fucking Visigoths than they do the Spanish Civil War.
Jesus Christ.
But it doesn't mean that it's not politically very relevant. Like,
I learned about this war from my Wolverine comics, so you know.
I have a Spanish an international brigades flag, but Spanish Second Republic flag, right? So the flag's different. Like, I can't think of a place I've lived where I haven't seen someone hanging that from a balcony. And the Second Republic fell in 1939. But you go down a working class barrio, and sooner or later you're going to see that, along with the, you know, anarchist flags, red and black flags, you know, anti-fascist symbology. But yeah, this is very, very current.
God damn.
Yeah, absolutely. Predicting it coming back around again, and people trying to, you know, rehabilitate. It's so important that we actually like learn this history, because, you know, Homo man is a wolf to man, and, you know, fascism and what it did to the Spanish pop. Now, it's an incredible, like, just cautionary tale, both in fascism as the ideology, but also the inability of the left to organize effectively. You know, even when the anarchists were able to stop the fascists dead in their tracks, and the entire city of Barcelona, at the end of the day, nobody would help the anarchists. Like, they preferred the fascists to them. That's why the very first propaganda, you know, by Ernest Hemingway, is called The Spanish Earth. And it was screened, I think, no aid from America, no aid even from France, which are like, you know, there's only so long you can hold the line against a professional mecha of Shell and Texaco, along with Mussolini and Hitler, only small arms and IEDs. You know, they didn't have any war industry, so halfway through, Stalin comes in, being the only one who will provide these weapons in the Bank of Spain, by the way.
Yeah,
because Stalin's not the reason. Yeah, and yeah, they provided the heavy artillery, the cannons that were desperately needed, but ultimately, you know, Stalin, I think, being his military than he was in an actual victory of the Spanish Republic.
Yeah, I think that's certainly true. There were, like, if people are really, like, if you want to be like firearm understanding dorks, the one company who supplied the anarchists were like CZ or Vazor or CZ if you're American. They still exist. They are not anarchists now, but they were willing to break both the Republic, right? So the Republic didn't want them selling to anarchists, and the international community had this non-engagement, right? That they weren't getting. No one was selling to Spain, which is a lie. They were selling to giving stuff to the fascists, right? But non-intervention was the and then obviously the fascists didn't want them to sell to the anarchists either. But the Czechs, the Czech state munitions company, were like, "No, fuck it, we will sell you some rifles and machine pistols." So you do have to hand it to them.
Well, it wasn't just the show did a great job of providing arms to the Republic. Not a lot, but like, yeah, even if you to Catalonia, Orwell spends like a bunch of time talking about just how much better the Mexican.
Yeah. I have one up on my wall actually. I can get it down, but like, yeah. But the CZ were the only ones who sold specifically to the CNT rather than to the Republic as a whole. Mm-hmm. Not that the CNT didn't end up with a bunch of those, Mexican most in the guns as well.
It's like, it's so weird because I really feel like in a lot of ways there is a lesson in what happens when you give people only something to fight against. And that's really sort of what happened once the Spain and we're setting up not even a communist state, but a liberal republic introduced private property. And it's right after they did that, like that's when it happened, because there were all of these incredibly motivated people, people probably fighting in Ukraine right now, that were they were on it to do absolutely everything that they could, and then by the end of it, and the left mark, this like the POUM had been suppressed. You just a liberal government that was slightly better than the fascists, who supplied and were preferred by the international community at that point. So, a horrifying reality.
I think Beevor has a good quote from one of the anarchists who said, "It doesn't matter who wins; the state wants to kill me." Which is it's not wrong. It's not wrong, sadly.
Man. What else about this movie, like from a historic standpoint, did anything kind of pop out at you guys? I was impressed, like considering like the kind of small scale, like you're talking about the lack of weapons and like the kind of small scale nature of any Civil War, but the Spanish Civil War like made it easier for the filmmakers. You know what I mean? Like their big ending set piece was like a cave barracks with a train. You know what I mean? Like that's some classic Hollywood. Let's get a train in there. It's they give them some movement, give the sense of the plot moving if we have a thing moving. But what else was there? Anything else like historically that kind of popped out to you guys? I mean, it was pretty plastic and cartoonish, but there might be some other things in there that kind of piqued your interest.
One of them had an MP40, which I didn't really make it to Spain until 1945 when Star started making copies of them. Which,
how dare they?
Yeah, I don't think anyone else really gives a fuck. That's me being a dork. I don't think I did enjoy the blowing up of trains. Like I'll never miss a chance to remind everyone that the protagonist in Hemingway's novel For Whom the Bell Tolls is probably based off William Alst. William Alst was an international brigade volunteer who was queer and was persecuted for his queerness. And that's fucked up. The left shouldn't be doing that to people. But his queerness is not in the book either, right? But blowing up trains was a big deal. And I don't know, sometimes people like to do discourse about like LGBTQIA people, but they've been killing fascists for just as long as anyone else.
Yeah, the thing that jumped out to me was right at the end, when they drive past Symbol, and you saw that in the trailer. That's up towards the end once priest killer I'm just going to call him Hawkeye now, have escaped. By the way, sorry, spoiler. You can come over to my side. Nobody, like, okay, that is the equivalent of like telling a woman like in freaking Kobani, like it's really important to realize, like, okay, even if they didn't think she was a leftist, like, again, slavery things that the fascists did, that I will just tell people to look. It's horrifying. It surpasses in cruelty like anything that happened in the Red Terror. No way in the world that she would or that she would enjoy her life as a woman in Spain. I mean, this was at a time when I think prior to even allowed out in public without a male escort. So, like, yeah, what's she gonna? Just there's such a huge missed opportunity when she's just like, we don't have anything in common. They're going, okay, the writer just figured out that his characters, but like no, in reality, it would be impossible. And I was waiting for her to drop that line, welcome there. But of course, apparently fascists in this are not, everyone's a lawyer or an idiot who joined, baked goods.
That was the weird thing. Is it was very much a depoliticizing of the fascists, but
Well, they
all the
just moved
lefties
it on. They put it on the Nazis, right?
that's the other thing I wanted to ask. Like, how present were the Nazis actually in the Spanish Civil War? Because here we see the Nazi looming over the shoulder, of I mean, like as a metaphor, you know what I mean? But like, how present were the Nazis actually? We know they weren't actually spreading around zombie serum or whatever, but who knows? Who
I thought
knows?
this was a documentary.
It's a metaphor for. What were you saying, James?
Sadly, the Nazis were extremely present, right? Like the Nazis were, if we look at, for instance, like two examples, right? The bombing of Guernica, very famous, right? It's a Picasso painting. That was the Condor Legion, right? These are German pilots flying German planes. At the very start, actually, when he's like, "Oh, there's a Messerschmitts," and then he goes, "No, those are Junkers." So Junkers are German bombers, right? That's what they developed a lot of their combined arms warfare in Spain. They're sort of using bombers and tanks and infantry together. And then
they developed tactics too, right?
Yes, yeah. The way to incorporate all three of those in an advance is something. So if we look at one dude, Oscar Dirlewanger, I don't speak German, but my colleague Robert did a 2-part podcast on this guy. Possibly the biggest piece of shit in the Nazi party, which is saying something. Like, oversaw some of the worst things you can imagine, right? Like, sort of, for instance, at one point he commanded his soldiers not to shoot Jewish people because it was a waste of bullets, so they should kill them with bayonets.
Jesus.
So Dirlewanger did 2 tours in Spain. He was sent home the first time because he was sexually abusing underage women, but he got sent back. And he was there, like, directing tank combat, teaching Spanish folks how to do tank combat. So, like,
of course,
yeah, Nazis were extremely present. More Italian volunteer troops actually fought, like, in terms of like units at the front. The Nazis sent a lot more things like pilots, advisors, weapons, because it was fascist planes that flew Franco and his army in Africa from Africa to Spain, so they could do the coup and start the civil war in the first place, right? So yeah, they both Nazis and Italian fascists were extremely present and getting their shit ready for what was going to be a larger war.
Just
okay,
that pretty much covers all of it. That Mussolini sent were primarily foot soldiers and the German Condor Legion. There's something of a case that I've heard made, used the horrors of Guernica to kind of pressure the government of Austria into just rolling over and letting Germany take them over without that commander along when he met with the head of that. I know that one major time when a lot of the fascist legionnaires went to the anarchists, because one of the things that we didn't see at all in this move, the army was heavily full of conscripts, and for a long time, a lot of the fascist soldiers on their side have been ideological fascists. So, like, yeah. Basically, like, when the guy was talking about the baked goods, it's a joke, but I could see that happening with regard to certain towns.
I mean, I live in California, and we had, like, during 2020, we had, like, police agencies scrambling helicopters because they saw a busload of Antifa memes on Facebook. You know what I mean? Like,
the Antifa bus.
Yeah, the Antifa buses are coming. So
and they all joined the police. All the cops joined because they wanted to protect the tri-tip, because they heard Antifa was going to take tri-tip from them.
I'm from Santa Maria, California, where we do tri-tip. They're going to take away or that's what the Republicans say. They're going to take your burgers away. The leftists want to take away your burgers. So those kind of, like, I don't know, dummy arguments. They catch people. They work on people. But
it's really frustrating because, like, you hear people say stuff like, and black shirts and the brown shirts now. Like, no. I mean, if you look at what they're doing and what these paramilitary organizations, I mean, like one of the most famous things that they did was like leftists like castor oil, strip them naked and drag them around town. Like, it's more extreme than even like freaking Cersei's walk of shame in Game of Thrones. So like
I'm binging that right now. It's a good reference.
So somebody's like saying like, oh, Antifa Democrats. I'm like, I'm gonna believe that when like, you know, Antifa starts oil.
Yeah. It's just, there was a lot of that done at the time, right? Like that the Republicans are going to come and rape you. You weren't allowed to be married, and the Republicans in Spain and blah blah blah. They didn't believe marriage. Certainly, a lot of anarchists didn't believe in marriage. You know, good on them. And there were definitely a lot of anarchists who believed in free love. Like it was under the Catalan Popular Front, right? They legalized abortion, and women could file for divorce. Like, that we're still having that fucking battle nearly 100 years later.
Of course we are. These people never went anywhere, right?
Yeah, no.
That's the interesting thing I see here is I don't know. As cartoonish as it can be, like they are pointing to things like the I guess the blatantness of the anti-religion was surprising to me, because it's like, yeah, I know about anti-fascism, but then it's like to see it so vocally connected with anti-religious feelings or anti-Christian, whatever,
anti-Catholic,
which is my favorite line in the movie. Yeah, my favorite line was, "I don't believe in nuns, but I believe they exist."
Yeah,
I had that in my notes.
Yeah, but like to understand how people hate the church was taking children away from leftists. Like often maternity hospitals were run by nuns, right? People would be anesthetized for a cesarean or another procedure, and then they would take their children away and give them to Catholic couples. This is deep into the 60s and 70s in the Franco dictatorship, right? Like the people can look up Niños Robados if they're interested. But like, there is a reason that people want to burn fucking churches, and it's because the church is absolutely complicit in these crimes against humanity. There,
you can look it up. You'll see all the priests Sieg Heiling. I mean, there's Viva la Quinta Brigada, which talks about the Irish Protestant, fascist Catholics in Spain. And the Catholic Church was not entirely united on the. There were Catholic priests that sided with the lower classes, and then by the fascists. You just you don't hear about that on the free lunch. And in fact, one of my favorite little anecdotes that I found in my research was the people who wanted to get married, like they wanted to do it even though it was free love, like so they wanted marriage. And the way it went was they would bring the couple down and they'd have them each sign a piece of paper, and they'd give one copy to each of them. I said, okay, all this, just come down here, bring both of the papers, and we'll rip them up. And then they would grab the guy. Okay, so here's the deal. We will rip those up, if you come back. A lot of these. So if you keep showing up here over and over again, we're going to kick you in the balls. And yeah, that was the enforced monogamy of the.
Oh, there's somebody's a little excited about that kind of idea these days as well. This character, what do we think about the nun character? And I mean, I don't know. There wasn't a whole lot to her, and she sacrifices herself heroically, or whatever.
She was bit, so she had to.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, but I know, like, I'd done a lot of fucked up shit in the Spanish Civil War, and obviously sort of oversaw a lot of shit. But yeah, I mean, look, again, right? Like, it's fun in Spain. A portion of your taxes still go to the Catholic Church unless you elect for them not to. So,
yeah.
like, The Spanish Ministry of Culture isn't going to be like, oh yeah, let's talk about some of these crimes. Like it's not. That's not. Nor could you, in a film, like you would have like Vox shitheads, with their little the gay ghost that they made.
Oh my god!
I don't know if people are familiar with the little gay ghost.
What are you talking about?
No, there's a gay
Vox
ghost.
Vox is the far right Spanish party that was like trying to evoke the spectre of like the LGBTQ lobby, like transing your children's gender, and they made this slogan logo thing that was like a ghost that was like had a pride flag, and people are like, yes, Ghost is fucking great. It's Ghost is queer as fuck. We love it. Like it's an icon for the queer community. Like,
gonna haunt your ass.
Yeah, they were really
incredible.
incredible. Yeah, like
so
everything.
funny.
It's like first as tragedy, and then as farce, and then again as farce, and then as farce a third time.
Oh my god!
Comic opera.
Yeah. 90-year comic opera.
Yeah, I think the priest killer character gets a moment where she kind of alludes to like what the priest might have done to her sister.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And it's just all very implied. Boy, man, like it doesn't give me much hope when I see like how skated over the most like or just ignored the most terrifying things about the fascists and the far right and seizing children and eradicating people, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's a fun setting for a zombie flick. Don't get me wrong. But it is weird, like how just that's like the default, depoliticize the fascists, and kind of make it. Even then, like the one thing I give credit to, they did show the leftists bickering with each other and being like, too annoyed with each other to fucking work together. So they got that right. But
not show that in Spain.
I mean,
and the end too, when she just kind of rides away as the fascist gets to go home, it's just a little like, oh, oof.
Said before,
what comes next?
There is a version of this film, like there is like a horror film, like that uses this premise in some dimension. It becomes the freaking cinematic equivalent of the Dali painting itself apart and stuff. You could like if somebody really wanted to just delve into zombies as a metaphor for fascism and what happened to people within, I think that would be phenomenal. It's just not this movie. This movie wants to be Shaun of the Dead with fascists.
By the way, this is based on a novel, and I kind of wonder if the novel got any of this stuff right or wrong. Because I have not read the book. And it's something like Night of the Living Dead, 1938. But it's like in Spanish. I don't remember exactly what it is, but because it's so hard to find anything online about this movie, to be honest with you.
It's very new.
If you see the ending credits, you'll actually see like adoptiado viva, and then it says like something 38.
I wanted to say, like, as much as like this film and the history we've been taught like brushes over the horrors of what happened, it also like brushes over how incredibly hopeful things were for the first few months of the Civil War and how amazing the world that people built when everything kind of fell apart, including structures of state and structures of authority was, right? And like that's why I'm really, really, really excited about what Brenton's doing, because I think that people like we can't just look at the sad shit, and we can't just look at the war and the genocidal violence, right? We also have to remember that like there was a moment when fucking everything went to shit and everyone helped each other, and like fascists tried to take over Barcelona and lost because like random ladies who worked in the underwear factory picked up rifles and killed them. And like even actually in at least one instance, right, there was a fascist machine gun that was firing at some soldiers on a barricade. A number of anarchists walked across with their rifles above their head, talked to the soldiers. I shouldn't say fascists, they were soldiers, right? And said, hey, like, you're working class, we're working class. Life doesn't get any better unless we fucking try something else. And they said, yeah, fair enough. Turn the gun around, shot their officers. Like, it's things like that. It's these little moments that I think what I take from the Spanish Civil War isn't that it's always sad and it's terrible. It's that like there's a much better world that is waiting for all of us if we're prepared to commit for fighting for it.
Yeah.
Sorry,
The world in our heart.
Yeah,
It really
I could have
does,
fucking done that, man. I really missed it. Yeah, a better world is growing in our hearts every day.
The battle for Barcelona was just so incredible because you had, the fascist attack. They were so incredibly confident that they were just going to roll over everybody, and basically just united against them. You had people throwing like plants and chamber hitting the soldiers below. The anarchists that were fighting at the docks, like a mobile forklift, that several of them together with like reams of industrial, that became a mobile barricade because the paper was actually able to stop bullets.
Yeah.
The attacks set up their freaking cars to blow and like, pop a brick on the to keep the steering wheel, and then bam, just a cab just smashes right and blows. So like, yeah, the fight is like one of the coolest things, and honestly, just from a strategic point, I think it may be like history that a civilian force was able to defeat an army. We've never seen that. I don't think we saw it before. There were some in Ireland, but yeah, I'm not aware of anything on that scale. Would you be, James, being me?
No, like I think there's a point. We did a 2-part podcast on this a while ago on the sort of first battle in Barcelona there. And
your podcast one more time. What's it called, James?
It could happen here.
It could happen here.
Places where
that's a scary title. That's a scary name.
But yeah, we spoke a lot about this. And I can't think of another instance.
So Afghanistan, for example, them defeating the British, that was not a civilian army?
I think not in the same way that this is, man. Like not in a 20th century regular armies with tanks and artillery getting owned by people who came out from the factory and picked up rifles from underneath their bed. By the way, there was a lawyer fighting in Barcelona, right? Luis Companys, the president of Catalonia, was a liberal lawyer who had previously defended anarchists. And by the end of the day, met with the anarchists and was like, look, guys, it's all you. Like there's a very, very famous speech where he says, like, the city is yours and it's in your hands. And if I can help you, I'll help you. But if you want me to be another foot soldier in the revolution, then I'll just pick up a rifle and fight.
Absolutely.
So yeah,
that will be in the Rudy comic when we get to it.
Nice. Yeah, great.
To work in, actually, there's a bit where Rudy actually, like, he comes in after, so he's got freaking bombs.
Yeah, he's still got his shit on, yeah.
Yeah. And this actually comes from, this was written by like a journalist at the time who had been Army liberal journalist who was like, yeah, the anarchists are just as bad as the fascists. Rudy like came up to him after that, was like, okay, dude, like, I know what you've been writing, should be careful about that because look what just happened. And like,
we'll have him kill you.
Like I have met that reporter like 3 times when I was at Occupy Wall Bottoms.
Yeah, I think I've met a reporter a lot of times. But yeah, like I like it's a fun film, and it does some fun things well. The aesthetic is spot on. But if it gets more people, I don't know how many people watch in America, but if it gets people to pick up some Spanish Civil War literature, pick up Brenton's comics, then that's a big win.
There's another show I think on Netflix. It's called Gunmen, or there's a Spanish Civil War show I think on Netflix. But if you haven't seen it, we probably shouldn't talk about it. But
Ken Loach's film is good. I think Brenton mentions Land of Freedom. It's like a dramatization of George Orwell plus love interest.
Of course, because can't go an hour and 30 without that.
No.
Fighting for our lives isn't romantic enough, I guess. But like any takeaways, like what interests me, I'm getting a BA in history right now, is like history is always interpretive. We're always like, whether you're a serious scholar doing critical argument and analyzing history, or you're putting up a fucking monument or making a stupid movie. Like it's always interpretive, right? And so what are we like? Historic films are interesting to me, like our memory of how we want to think things happen versus how they actually did. Like, what is it about the Spanish Civil War? What do you guys think we can learn from it? Because I feel like both of your work is focusing on this. Like, what do we need to take from this time and bring into today? What do we need to remember? And maybe this movie is the best vehicle for that. But what do you guys think about that?
I think,
well, James, you're the expert.
I don't know. Now we're going into speculation, which is the opposite of what historians are supposed to do. I think that there was a time in Spain where people didn't necessarily, people disagreed on shit, but they realized that their disagreements with fascism were much more profound and much more serious and much more threatening to their sort of material conditions and their ongoing existence. And so they put this stuff aside, right? And they all picked up rifles and paving stones and built barricades and killed fascists. And there was a moment when that happened here too, right? Like in 2020, there was a moment in Occupy, there was that moment. Standing Rock a little bit, maybe that there was that moment, and then we sort of tweeted at each other, and it all fell. And I think the reason I do what I do now for a living is because that moment is the most amazing feeling that you will ever experience, and it's very, very powerful to be in the street with people and watching cops run away or whatever. And so I think that and that moment lasted for fucking months in Spain, right? And that is the thing that I've taken away from it, and I also have been chasing my entire adult life since then. So for me, it's doesn't have to be a fleeting thing. It doesn't have to be a thing that only lasts for one night or 1 week or what have you. It's a thing that if we don't allow it to die, can exist and can thrive, and we can all thrive in that kind of moment. That's what I take out of it. I know it's quite sort of nerdy and philosophical, but yeah, that's what it is for me.
Not to me.
Yeah. To riff off of that, I mean, so who writes historical fiction along with the other just straight fiction that I do, like Snow White. I think what I found so compelling about this is that the world when I found reading Orwell's account of it. I mean, this is a place that going to write articles. He's going to be a war correspondent, and he in it and joined a militia because he realized that there was even some stuff that he didn't find it as his words, a state of affairs worth fighting for. So important about history, especially if you're taking history from a artistic, because history is not story shaped, and there's effectively infinite information left out. It's very important for me to kind of capture the feel, the meaning of it, and that's what I've set out to do with Durruti. But this is what I find so incredibly compelling about the Spanish anarchists. This is one of Durruti to it earlier in the podcast. We know what we want. To us, it means union somewhere in the world, for the sake of whose peace and tranquility the workers of Germany and fascist barbarians. By Stalin. We want revolution here in Spain, right? Maybe after the next European war. We are giving Hitler and Mussolini far more to worry about with that army of Russia. We are setting an example for the German and Italian working class on how to deal. We have always lived in slums and holes in the ground. We know how to accommodate ourselves. We must not forget that we can also build. It is we, the workers, who built these Palestine and America and everywhere. We, the workers, we can build others to take their place. We are not in the least afraid of ruins. We are going to inherit the earth. That the bourgeoisie might blast and ruin its own world before it leaves the stage of history. Here in our hearts, that world is growing by the minute.
Hell yeah, dude.
Yeah.
What are the songs? We got to start singing the songs. I got my guitar, my acoustic guitar is a broken string. Otherwise, I'd be playing Woody Guthrie right now. So,
Which fun fact? Woody Guthrie shares a birthday with Durruti and myself.
whoa, what day is that?
July 14th.
Oh wow, Bastille Day too.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a great.
Yeah.
It's a great day.
That is-
We gotta
say,
do
very
one of
day.
the Woody Guthrie movies or whatever on
Yeah.
your birthday. That would be cool.
Yeah, there's that interesting one with
David Carradine.
David Carradine, yeah.
It's
which
weird, but
I've been
works.
trying to
It
track
actually
down.
works. Bound for Glory. I've seen it. It surprisingly works. It's not great, but it works. Times weren't great during that time. You guys know that photo of that everyone uses of the Great Depression? The woman like with her head in her hand, and her little kid over her. That was literally filmed miles from where I live. That picture was taken in Nipomo, California, and I live in Santa Maria, which is an agriculture town, and I teach music, or I taught music for several years, and I tell my students, or a lot of them are young, like Latinos, like, hey man, it wasn't always this way. Like back in the day, 100 years ago, white people were migrant farm workers. Like it's like the dynamics can change, but those are interesting times. Definitely everything we saw in Valley of the Dead, like talk about interesting times. But this was I thought it was a fun movie. I wouldn't say it's a great movie, but if you're into history and you like a mashup, the fun thing about it is, it's a zombie movie meets a war movie, meets a lot of those tropes you see, like the train, blowing up a train and all that kind of fun stuff. Last thoughts, guys. I know it's about time we got to wrap this up, but I had a lot of fun talking about this. Thank you for bringing both of you your expertise to this. Like this was a really cool conversation to have.
Yeah, particularly James, and definitely it could happen here. I'm writing the funny books, but yeah, he's a legit.
Hey, thank you, man. Thanks for inviting us, both of us. Please buy Brenton stuff. Like I would love to see more history done this way that's successful, and an anarchist history shouldn't be in stupid books that have words that are unnecessarily long and are difficult to understand and time consuming to read. So
of course.
Much respect for doing that, man.
Yeah, I'll send you an advanced PDF. I think you'll really like it.
Hell yeah, Ben. Yeah. Got some travel coming up, so I enjoy that.
Way cool.
All right.
Thank you guys again. Andy, any last thoughts you want to add?
No,
this was your choice. Great choice.
Yeah, no, this was a lot of fun. I know I don't remember ever learning about the Spanish Civil War in school. Literally, like the first time I ever even heard of it was in a Wolverine comic. And I just remember the cover had Wolverine with a Gatling gun, and I'm just like, oh hell yeah! And then it's like, wait, what's going on here?
Yeah.
So it kind of blew my mind that had happened, and it's something I still don't know a lot about, but I certainly know I more than your average pedestrian, obviously, but I still do. I feel overwhelmed thinking about how much I don't know about the Spanish Civil War. So
really, there's a couple of really great books and films you shot about it at first, Pan's Labyrinth, where a lot of people did, but on YouTube, documentary that the BBC did called Living Utopia that they have with footage from the time. And it's about an hour and a half long. I highly recommend it. You can also read George Orwell, which is phenomenal, and also Arts by Adam Hochschild. And if you're interested in Durruti, you comic book from AK Press, and you can also get Durruti in the Spanish Revolution by Abel Paz. Actual anarchist, did fight, was imprisoned by the Franco regime, and is a historian. Huge, but it's phenomenal. It's without Paz's be very, we would not have the wealth of knowledge that we have today.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, guys. Have a good night. And to all our many viewers who are at least watching live, we know we get a lot more people watch later. Thanks for joining us here. And hopefully this conversation was fun. It'll make you learn more about the Spanish Civil War. Check out some of these books. articles, whatever, or maybe watch this movie, Valley of the Dead. So thanks again, guys.
Oh yeah. Have a good evening, guys. Bye.
Left is best.
Yeah.